Yeah, yeah. Ball so hard, you better believe me, it's scary. It's basketball at the bar with Calvin and Barry. So put a tip in the jar, cause these dudes can really fill it up. Whether it's buckets you need or just a beer in a cup. We're here for fresh conversations and some delicious libations. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. My boys got you covered like you being guarded by paying. From the glove to the claw and everyone else in between. Calvin and Barry got everything that you need. For sure. So sit back, relax, because we're starting the show. It's basketball at the bar. Grab your drinks and let's go. Yeah. Grab a drink and let's go. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification. Calvin and Barry. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification. Let's get it.
What up, ballers? Welcome to Basketball at the Bar. Join us live every weekday for the best NBA podcast here on YouTube, where the takes are hot and the drinks are cold. There's no dress code, and you can take us wherever you go. So pull up a stool, drop a leg, and don't forget to subscribe. This is Basketball at the Bar. Grab your drinks, and let's go, Calvin. It's Wednesday. I want to apologize to anybody that's been waiting on us. We are 2 hours late today. We had a bunch of things going on here in the studio, in the house, some inspections, stuff like that. But we're here. We're back. We were not going to miss out on an opportunity to hang out with you guys. So we got about an hour until game time, and we're here to hang out. Shout out to Progressive G. And Calvin, happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, Barry.
A long intro, right?
Yeah.
How's your morning so far? You went and played some basketball?
I've had a great day. I got to actually shoot and dribble on an indoor court for the first time in 3 years, Barry.
Wow.
3 years. And I got kicked out. I was only there for about 10 minutes.
This is a very famous court too, right?
It is a very famous court. It is the Lahaina Civic Center. It's where they host the Maui Invitational Tournament every Thanksgiving week. Well, used to. Yeah, hopefully it'll be back. But
it's crazy.
I'm fired up because that's like my sanctuary, man. I miss that. And even though I was only in there for a little bit, it's like a drug, you know. I can't get enough of it, and I can't wait to go back.
I know, man. I wish I could have joined you for that, but maybe sometime soon here. But let's jump here into the show. We're basically going to dedicate like 90% of this show to talking about the game today. As I mentioned, Game 3 is tipping off here in about an hour. And Calvin, it's in Boston. It's the first game in Boston, which is exciting. But before we jump into that, there's two topics to cover real quick. You want to catch us up here?
Yeah, well, first of all, this is like minor newsworthy here, but the NBA and the NBA Players Association are having had earlier a preliminary meeting in Boston today focusing on the new CBA. The current collective bargaining agreement doesn't expire until the end of the 23-24 NBA season. However, both sides have a clause that they're able to opt out of the current CBA by this December. So they're just getting together right now to have some early talks so that they can hopefully avoid a lockout situation like we've seen, not in all sports in the past. It doesn't see the warning signs or the panic meter on that seems to be very low at the moment. And again, that's why they're getting together early so that they can try to iron out any differences that the two sides might have now before they get to the real deadline.
Any significance in it being in Boston, or is this a business expense to go to Game 3 of the finals?
I think it's probably an excuse just to be in the area for an NBA Finals game. A lot of these guys were going to be there anyway, probably, like the commissioner and whatnot. So it's probably just a fun, like, hey, let's get together, talk about some stuff, and then go watch Game 3.
He's got a tough job, Adam Silver, but could you imagine where it's like, oh, I need a ticket to the finals. Yeah. Like, come on, I got to be sitting close. You're going to put the commissioner up in the second level? Like, come on. I need courtside.
Right?
I need courtside.
If I was the commissioner, I don't know if I'd want to be courtside, actually.
Do you think he has, like, many fans or, like, people that follow him around? They're like, hey, Adam Silver, can you sign my...
He probably has a few, and I bet Adam Silver has more of those people than David Stern did.
Yeah, at least in New York, maybe. Oh, man. So, not a big deal, you're saying, for now?
Well, for now, yeah. I mean, there are definitely issues that, again, as this, gets closer and closer to the actual deadline or the opt-out date in December, that, talks will heat up. But all points right now are indicating that we don't need to be worried about an NBA lockout.
Yeah. I think you mentioned the main point of discussion was competitive balance.
There's a couple ones, but yes, competitive balance is definitely one that's going to be heavily brought up by the Players Association. You have rules that have been put in place in recent CBA negotiations and contracts, things like the luxury tax, bird rights, all this stuff to try and incentivize players to stay with their teams longer and not, have the world of free agency be the controlling force in what makes good and bad teams. And then on the other side of that coin, you have smaller market teams who are complaining, maybe not isn't the right word to use currently, but they look at an organization like Golden State, who not only do they have all these great players and they've drafted really well, but they're a big market team. They're the second highest valued team in the NBA, and that gives them the advantage to spend this year $170 million into the luxury tax in order to keep their team competitive and relevant. Smaller market teams like Oklahoma City, like Sacramento, they don't necessarily have that same ability, same advantage. So that will be brought up. But again, these issues right now are not like DEFCON 5 things that we need to worry about crushing the entire agreement.
And just in case, if there's no NBA next season, we'll still be here. So you guys can tune in and watch us. Progressive G says, what do you think will happen with the new CBA? Will the owners get back a bit more power? What do you exactly mean by that? I want to hear from you, Progressive. What do you think they could do to get back some power? Because you're right. Like, the power has definitely shifted towards the players. And I don't know if it's ever going back or how to even put it back in the players. But on a larger scale, I feel like power is going to the worker or the employee or whoever in all aspects, not even just in the NBA, but like you look at YouTube, you look at a lot of these platforms, like the creators, the artists, the musicians, they're being empowered. And kind of like the middleman or the guy that like makes the connections is kind of slowly being eliminated out of a lot of these things. So I'm interested to hear your take, Progressive, but I don't know what they can do to get power back.
Yeah, it's interesting. Certainly the last couple of years have had a huge effect on just business as a whole, right? The way everything is run, the amount of money that is available. And another note to keep in mind here, while the CBA expires at the end of the 23-24 season, the new television rights deal ends at the end of the 24-25 season, I believe. And once you go into that new deal, the league is expecting a big increase in rights and fees and stuff going to the broadcasting companies for the TV rights. So
yeah, just kind of like last time too, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we'll see the salary cap
it might
bump
go
up
back
as well.
up. Yeah.
But I mean, just back on the point of players versus owners, honestly, like the reason why basketball is such a popular sport is because it doesn't cost a lot of money to play. Like literally you need a basket, which could be a trash bin, a waste basket, anything, in a ball.
Peach basket.
That's it. I think I was watching something last night where they were talking about it was on the, who was it? The Dirk documentary, where they were talking about his coach, and they were talking about like, I think it was his coach's mentor before that was like the one that played in the first league where they had an actual like waste bucket up there. But back to my point, it doesn't cost a lot of money to play basketball.
Yeah.
So if you were to look at it objectively here, without the players, there's nothing, right? The players can still play basketball without the owners, right? Like maybe it's pickup games, people can record it, broadcast it, stuff like that. Not that I'm saying that's going to happen, because obviously you're talking about millions, billions of dollars here. But in terms of like negotiating, the players have all the power because they are necessary for the game to happen. The owners are not so necessary, in my opinion.
Yeah, not in a way. I think that's a good comment too, Progressive. Just finding a way to limit the amount of control a player has in where they end up playing, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a free agent, you obviously should control your own destiny and all that stuff. But forcing your way into trades and, you know, that can really put a franchise or an organization in a really difficult position. So
we've seen in the past they've done things in the CBA like the amnesty clause and stuff like that to kind of like eliminate a bad contract and help a team. But they still had to like pay out that player. And then it would like count towards their cap for like 3 or 4 years or something like that. They would spread it out. Maybe they could do something like where if a player like Ben Simmons says he's not going to play for the team anymore, maybe, you know, the team can like have an exempt list that they can put him on to where he doesn't count towards the salary cap and he can't sign anywhere else. But then again, they're still stuck paying him like hundreds of millions of dollars. They could maybe put a provision in there where it's like, okay, if you're on this exempt list, your salary's cut in half or more. But I don't know if the PA would agree to that.
Yeah, they wouldn't. And that would be a hard thing, you know, when somebody brings up an issue like mental illness, that would be an easy way to fight that, right? Like
exactly.
So it's difficult. It's a very difficult thing to do, to find that common ground.
Yeah, it is tough. Speaking of common ground, players from the 80s and 90s are finding less and less common ground with today's players. Calling today's players soft, the current era soft. We've been seeing it more and more in the news about, you know, just comments on how players only care about what? Tattoos, Instagram, girls.
Yep. They're coddled.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Calvin? I'm very mixed.
This conversation is so funny to me. I mean, this is definitely not the first time we've heard this, right? It seems to like come in phases,
especially during the finals.
And right now it's super hot. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. First
Tell us how you really feel, Cal.
First, let's address the old farts, right? The 80s and 90s guys.
Old farts, okay.
Here's my issue. Your biggest point right now is that guys in today's league are soft, and guys like Draymond Green would get knocked out if he played in the 80s and 90s. First of all, why is that something to be proud of? I don't understand why we brag about that to begin with. We're talking about basketball, not boxing or the MMA.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful game, and it shouldn't be mucked up by guys who punch each other in the face. And second of all, the idea that players in today's game aren't tough. You think Dwight Howard isn't tough? That guy's built like a Greek god. Anybody in their right mind who thinks that Bill Laimbeer is tougher than Dwight Howard because he chose to punch a couple people during a game knows absolutely nothing, okay? Bill Laimbeer punched people during a game because he wasn't a skilled basketball player. That's why he punched people. So don't give me this crap about how guys aren't tough in today's game. Now, as it goes to today's players, I understand that you're tired of being called soft. You're tired of people saying, oh, we complain too much. But here's the problem. They do complain too much. And yes, J.J. Redick, I love J.J. Redick. I love listening to him. I love it when he makes Stephen A. Smith look like a buffoon on national television. But I did have a problem with some things that he was saying today. He was arguing with Stephen A. Smith that guys in the 80s and 90s complained as well. Jordan complained. Gary Payton complained were two of the names that he used. And he's absolutely right. They did complain. But that's why guys complain so much today, because they grew up watching that and it became an okay thing. And the problem is now that not guys complain or that star players complain. Stars will always complain. The problem today is that everyone complains, and they complain constantly. Even the 10th guy off the bench is always in the ref's face. You think in a 1990s playoff game, if B.J. Armstrong or Bill Wennington thought they got fouled and they started talking to the ref, what would Michael Jordan have done?
Punch him in the face.
He'd punch him in the face probably and say, dude, get back on defense. Also, yes, Michael Jordan would complain, but he would never waste a possession on defense to talk to the ref. I see LeBron do that all the time during games.
Yeah,
I see Luka Doncic do it all the time during games. So I understand people who, especially guys who play in today's era, are tired of that narrative. But the problem is that it's become an epidemic. It's way too constant all the time, and it's affecting the actual game at hand. We saw Luka do it 2 possessions in a row in a playoff game this season.
Yeah.
So both sides need to just chill out, forget about it. This conversation is so stupid about which era is better or which era is tougher. It just celebrate guys that were good in the 80s and 90s and celebrate guys that are good today and stop fucking complaining. I'm sick of it.
Yeah. I got a lot to say on this also.
It's so
but I
frustrating.
love that rant by you. That was a good one. But yeah, I mean, for me, it comes down to a couple different things. First off, today's players are so much more skilled than they were in the 80s and the 90s.
Yes, that's another great
point.
point.
I think that creates some jealousy, right?
Sure.
Because if you're the third best player on your team nowadays versus the third best player in the 80s, there's a big difference there. On top of that, you throw in the money, right? Like, I feel like there's so many players from the 80s and 90s that are still salty because...
And they have a right to be.
Yeah,
like,
they created they helped build the foundation.
Yes.
And now these guys are making $20 million to not even play a single game. John Wall, $40 million, didn't play a single game. So I see that. And that kind of adds in a lot of other components too, right? Like the obsession with jewelry and tattoos and all these things. I feel like a lot of these kind of started with Allen Iverson, right? Like he made those things popular. He made those things cool. And not that they weren't cool before, but he made it cool to like get those and show it off. And like, you're not as cool as me unless you have these in the public. And he seems to be financially hurting a little bit because of stuff like that. But for me, the main difference is money. And also everybody has a voice now. Social media, all the interviews and stuff like that. Like everybody has a voice. If I were to ask you, Calvin, if you were to rank Pat Beverly in terms of like best players on the Timberwolves, where would he be?
Oh, man.
4th?
No, he might even be lower than that. I mean, I think I'd put Jaden McDaniels over him right now.
And he has the ability to go on to ESPN and complain about whatever he wants and have the loudest voice in the room for weeks on end after he gets eliminated from the playoffs. There's no way that would happen in the 80s or the 90s. Maybe Jordan had a voice. Maybe Pippen. Maybe Rodman. Yeah. I don't even know how much of a voice those two guys really had. It was mainly Jordan had a voice, you know. But
if you ask Scottie Pippen, he had no voice.
Could you imagine having the 6th guy off the bench having a voice and being able to go on ESPN, having his own podcast, making hundreds of millions of dollars? Like that right there is the big difference to me. It's not even the whole complaining thing, which I love how you took it towards that route because I want to talk about that too. But like if you're just to talk about like the difference between today's players and yesteryear's players, today's players are a lot more skilled and they make a lot more money. They are true professionals.
Yeah.
In terms of like a lot of guys from the 80s, 90s maybe had a second job or you know, they had a shorter career and this was not their entire life. Maybe like the top guys are, but not everybody. And as far as like complaining goes, Progressive G says complaining about a bad call is much different than complaining about demanding a trade. Like Anthony Davis and Ben Simmons, that stuff didn't happen anywhere as often as it today. And you're right. And that's part of the player empowerment and part of the fact that you give this guy $100 or $200 million. That's FU money, man. Once you've already made that much, you can literally say to your team, I don't need any more money from you. I want my money, but I have the stability now to say, F you, I don't want to be on your team. Trade me or I'm never playing again. Guys didn't have that opportunity in the 80s and 90s because they weren't getting paid this much money. Yeah. But as far as like complaining to the referees go, I think it's way out of control. Just look at what Draymond Green has been doing and look at what he's been saying. Yes, the referees treat me differently. I earned it. I deserve it. And I enjoy that they treat me differently. That's a bunch of crap, man. Get that shit out of here. Everyone needs to be officiated the same. And I think the referees really just, there needs to be a point, and you can't do it in the middle of the NBA finals, but there needs to be a point, maybe it's at the start of next year or something, where you're like, we're putting our foot down. You can say 1, 2 things to me, or you can say, ask me about the call or something like that. But if it's any more than that, or this continued back and forth, it distracts the referee, and the referee can't do their job while they're having a player jawing at them. So they need to step their foot down, and they need to say something like, hey, you say something again, that's a technical. Like, they need to get on that. And it would take maybe a month, maybe a few weeks of going through that before it finally sits in. It's like, okay, this is how the game is going to be now. But I don't really know, man. That's really tough. They complain way too much.
They do. And yeah, I mean, one of the biggest or easiest reasons to point to why it's so different are just like Progressive G is saying in these last 2 comments. It's a different game. As you mentioned, the talent level is much higher from top to bottom than it's ever been in basketball. Guys are just ridiculous shooters, which spreads the game open. There's not as much, there's no hand checking like we point out here. And I want to point out that a lot of those things are for the better.
Yeah. Like, the rule change is a good opinion, but you're right.
It makes you able to watch better basketball, more skilled basketball. Like, it's not a question of softer or anything like that. It's that you get to see why guys are so talented now, and it's on display all the time.
Yeah, people are not paying to see an 80 to 80 game.
Exactly.
With
another thing that JJ Redick said today. If you want to watch a 72-72 NBA Finals game, be my guest. But that's not the game I want to watch.
Yeah, people want high-flying dunks. They want alley-oops. They want deep threes. They want exciting things. And that's why the NBA has become so popular, is because the NBA has embraced that. And the final thing I'm going to say about this whole situation is, just like in comparing players that play different positions, it's almost impossible to compare different generations of players or different eras of the NBA, because there's so many different variables, the rule changes, all that stuff. So very, very hard to compare. And your initial point that you made after your rant there was everybody needs to chill the fuck out and just enjoy what you're watching.
Exactly. And Progressive G, there was zone defense in the 90s. In fact, it was easier to play zone defense in the 90s because you didn't have a defensive 3-second rule. Doesn't mean they played it as often, but they definitely did play zone in the 90s.
Yeah, and they didn't have Steph Curry making shots.
Yeah, exactly.
Wherever. All right, enough about that, Calvin. Let's jump here into the game, because that's what we're really here for. Today's exciting, and I'm glad you're fired up, because we have Game 3 of the NBA Finals today. It tips off here in about 40 minutes or so. It's in Boston. The first game in Boston. The series is tied 1-1 in Boston. Calvin, Boston has home court advantage right now.
As of now.
Which is a little crazy. Boston's favored by 3.5 this game. The first game they have been favored in this series. And the over-under is at 214. Calvin, first thoughts on the game. Also, real quick, nobody on the injury report for Boston. Iguodala, Porter, Payton, all listed day-to-day for Golden State.
Yep. First thoughts on the game today are going to be how does Boston come out of the locker room to start the third quarter? Because they've been outscored by 33 points in the third quarter in this series in games 1 and 2. And if it wasn't for that fourth quarter, they'd be down 2-0 right now in a big hole, right? In this series. How are Marcus Smart and Al Horford going to play? They're at home. They have the home court, the home crowd behind them. You would think that they play better than they did in Game 2, combined 4 points between the two of them. And then for Golden State, I'm looking at Klay Thompson. All eyes seem to be on him right now, especially after his comments in the post-game press conference after Game 2, saying he's going to go on YouTube and type in Game 6 Klay to get some motivation for the rest of this series. So how does he come out and because if he all of a sudden turns it on and starts knocking down threes all over the place like we know he's capable of, that's really going to change things from a defensive standpoint for Boston.
Yeah, definitely. And, just being at home, too, is a huge difference. I'm looking here at the past 5 games for Golden State. You beat Dallas, you lose to Dallas. You beat Dallas, you lose to Boston. You beat Boston, lose to Boston today.
We'll see.
That's the pattern.
The Warriors have, in this playoffs, they've won every single first road game in the series, in every series so far.
Okay,
so
interesting. So we have 2 conflicting trends.
Yes.
And you know what they say, the trend is your friend. So...
But you can, if you look hard enough, you can find a trend probably in any direction that you want.
Yeah.
And Technopez, and I like that comment too. If anybody doesn't know, the Warriors basket today for warm-ups when they got to the gym was too tall. They measured it.
Oh, wow.
They pulled a Hoosiers, brought out the measuring stick. It was over 10 feet tall. They had to get it adjusted before warm-ups today. So
wow. Boston's pulling out all the stops
They
here.
are pulling out all the stops.
If you don't know, now you know. Techno Peasant Boston used their home court advantage to sabotage the Warriors. Well, they better check it again at halftime because, they could have an interesting maybe glow-in-the-dark halftime show that allows them to get near that basket. The question that I want to know is, or the answer is, did they measure both hoops or just one?
I don't know. I just saw a picture on Instagram of the ruler or the measuring stick hanging from the rim, and it wasn't touching the ground. It was like an inch or half an inch or whatever off the ground.
Oh, man. Yeah. And I know football's a game of inches, but apparently basketball is a game of inches now, too. All right. So will the Celtics make any defensive changes in Boston? We kind of briefly touched on this. Any other thoughts on defensive changes?
Well, as of right now, the Celtics have no reason to change anything. They're packing the paint because, yes, the Warriors shoot a ton of threes, but they really kill teams by their ability to get to the basket. And Steph has been really good in games 1 and 2, but they haven't, Jordan Poole played much better in game 2, but outside of that, they haven't had anybody really kill them from the outside, which isn't stretching that defense. So right now, what Boston is doing is they're going to let Steph go one-on-one on these pick and rolls. They're not going to blitz him. They're not going to completely trap and try to force the ball out of his hands, because right now they're living with the fact that, okay, Steph might get hot, but as long as nobody else beats us, we're good.
Yeah.
That's where I'm talking about. If Klay comes out and plays like Klay Thompson, or the Klay Thompson that we know, that's when Boston will have to start saying, okay, now we have to actually worry about these guys, and what are we going to do with Steph in the pick and roll? Is he going to have complete wide open lanes to get to penetrate, or get guys going under the screens in which he's just going to light it up all day? So if I'm Boston right now, I'm saying I'm okay because nobody else has really gotten hot or really caught fire against us. Wiggins has had a couple good quarters, but he hasn't shot the ball ridiculously well. Klay hasn't, and Jordan Poole was pretty ineffective in game 1. So right now, if you're Boston, you stay the course until somebody makes you change.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just looking here at the salary cap differences between these two teams. Boston's paying $133 million this year to have this team on the court. Golden State, $178 million. So that's $40 million more, which is pretty wild. Almost 40. That's no Klay Thompson or no Wiggins. One of those guys off, and then they're equivalent, which is quite weird. Who's your X factor for Game 3?
Well, if I'm talking about the Celtics, I'm not going to pick any one particular guy, although I think it's pretty easy to say Marcus Smart or Al Horford should be the X factor, right? Like if they get a good game out of one of those two guys, they have a really good chance to win. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about the Celtics, it really comes down to one stat: turnovers.
Yep.
It's been well documented at this point, but the Celtics in the postseason, 13-2 when they turn the ball over 15 times or less, 0-5 when they turn the ball over 16 times or more.
I think 19 in game 2.
19 in game 2, and the 33 points off those 19 turnovers for the Warriors, second highest, tied for the second highest in a finals game in NBA Finals history.
Wow.
So that's what it's all about if you're Boston. It's finding ways to take care of the ball, be more deliberate with your passes, your cuts, not over-penetrating. Jaylen Brown has been really, really bad at that at some time, in some cases. If they can take care of the ball, they're at home, they stand a great chance to win. For the Warriors, I've already put it out there, so I'm just going to keep going with it. It's Klay Thompson.
Game 6 Klay.
Yeah, if he's Game 6 Klay today, the Celtics have a lot more to worry about all of a sudden.
Okay. I got 2 different X factors. Well, one of them's kind of similar. I got Al Horford, for sure. I think Al needs to have a big game. He needs to be Big Al in this game. I think if he plays well, I would say if he has a double-double in this game, the Celtics win. As far as the Warriors, I'm looking at Draymond Green. I think he's my X factor. I know he had the well-coveted triple single in game 2. But for me, I'm really looking at it as far as, like, how much time is Draymond actually going to be on the court? If he's in foul trouble or if he gets ejected this game, I think the Warriors lose. I think if he's able to remain on the court in crunch time, I think the Warriors win this game. And I'm really looking forward to see what the referees do with handling Draymond Green, because he made some pretty bold statements after the last game. And the referees are probably paying attention to that stuff. And they probably got a call from the league office.
Speaking of another trend.
Yeah.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
Boston 12-0 this postseason when Scott Foster officiates the game.
Oh, wow.
12-0.
And he's here?
I think
today?
I think he is working game 3.
Good thing Chris Paul is not out there, right? But yeah, so my biggest factor is Draymond even going to be available for this whole game? Because I could see a situation where he gets tossed. I could see a situation where they just go at him early and they get him frustrated. They get him in foul trouble. If he's able to play the whole game and play well, Warriors win. If Big Al can get a double-double, play big, Celtics win.
Yeah,
we'll see
I think
what
that's
happens.
fair.
We'll see what happens. Progressive G. Al Horford has to step it up like game 1, and agreeing with you, Celtics got to stop turning the ball over. 100%. Techno Peasant, do you guys think Draymond will make it to the end of the game today? I mean, I already gave you my
all
opinion.
Up to him, man.
I don't know.
It's all up to him. He's got to find a way to keep it in check enough and still play with that intensity that, the Warriors obviously feed off of. And sometimes that's a very fine line to walk, especially on the road.
Yep.
In a hostile environment like the TD Garden, which is one of the loudest places to play in the entire league.
Yep.
So
and also known
it's
for
up to him.
Racial slurs as well.
Yes.
Which is quite unfortunate, and that can get under guys' skins as well. For me, Draymond, it's hard to tell. Like, I've learned a few things in my life. Not a lot of things, but I've learned a few things. One of them is you can't try and think rationally about an irrational person. And honestly, I think Draymond Green is an irrational person, or at least he can be at times. Maybe not all the time. Maybe off the court, he's a very rational person. But I see situations on the court where he gets in his feelings and he becomes irrational. And if that happens, there's no telling what he's going to do. So like Calvin said, it's really up to him whether he stays on the court tonight or not. Jay Drew says he will probably get tossed tonight. He's been testing the water too much. Yeah. And it didn't seem like he learned his lesson in game 2. It seemed like he doubled down on it. So maybe the ball's in the referee's court in this game, right?
Just might be.
No, Draymond, no. You can't do that. No, Draymond. I don't know. Do you wear headphones if you're a referee, or earplugs, or like, what do you do if the guy's just yelling at you the whole game long?
I mean, unfortunately, that's what these guys are used to.
Get paid millions of dollars and go sleep in my mansion afterwards. That's the correct answer, right?
I don't know if any ref makes millions of dollars, but
you don't think Scott Foster's a millionaire?
Well, he might be a millionaire at this point in his life, but I would be very surprised if any official made $1 million during the course of an NBA season.
I mean, maybe they're not making $1 million from the NBA.
6 figures,
but
sure.
maybe they're making
like,
$1 million from
these
other
guys
sources.
are getting huge. Oh man, you had to throw that one in there. These guys are obviously getting big time bonuses for reffing NBA Finals games and playoff games and things like that.
Yep.
But
speaking of other parties involved, Vegas definitely had their hands all over the Kings-Lakers series. I'm just going to put that out there for sure. And if you'd like to get your hands all over this series, hey, we're sponsored by BetUs. All you need to do is go down below in the description, click on that link, and they will provide you 125% of your first deposit, and you can bet on the game today and hopefully win some money, and maybe you guys would be willing to share with us if we give you some good tips. Calvin, I'm looking here on the BetUs website right now. A lot of interesting bets going on today. We got point spread, we got money line on the game, over under that I said is 214, and then we got a bunch of prop bets here. I want to go over a couple of these with you and just kind of see which one you like. First one, we got a ton of Steph Curry bets here. Now this is total points plus rebounds plus assists. Over is 39.5. Then you have total points plus assists, an over of 33.5. Total points plus rebounds is also 33.5. And then total rebounds and assists, 10.5. Total points, 28.5. There's a ton more, but any of those you like?
man, I mean, with Steph, you could like them all. Like, I feel like if you're going to take one, you might as well take the rest of them because he's in a good zone right now. He's been the only Warrior really that has been super consistent in terms of scoring. He's averaging 32 points per game in the finals right now. So, yeah, I mean, go big.
Okay. I see an Andrew Wiggins here, one that I really like. This is total points, rebounds, and assists for Andrew Wiggins. It's only 23.5. I like the over on that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. You know, Andrew Wiggins is asked to do so much for Golden State on the defensive end. I wonder how much that wears on him over the course of a whole game in terms of, offensively being able to create your own shot late in the fourth quarter or get to the basket, or how tired your legs are when you're putting up threes. So he's certainly capable of having a big game. But I think my money's on Klay today. Okay. I really do.
We also have a Draymond Green total points, rebounds, and assists. It's only 21.5. You like that better than the Wiggins one?
No, not really. I just don't think Draymond is going to put up double-digit points. So that one's tough for me.
Klay Thompson, 24.5 total points, rebounds, assists.
Yeah, take the over.
You like the over on that one?
Take it.
Dude, there's so many prop bets on here. If you guys love betting, go to BetUs because there is a ton of stuff here to bet on. I gotta stop looking at this, Calvin. I'll spend all my money. And then the game will be over and I'll either have a ton of money or no money at all. Or I can just bet like Ethan and bet both sides, and then you come out even or below. True. Foster does have ties to Donahue. Oh, really?
Donahue.
Made a lot of money, but there's a different story. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Anything last to say about this game, Calvin, before we jump here into Q&A?
Just can't wait to watch it, finally. Feels like it's been months since we had a game.
I know, it really has. These breaks in between games are very rough on me. However, Friday's game is going to be pretty soon for Game 4.
Yeah,
so we're only going to have one day.
And then another game on Sunday.
No, Monday.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, Monday.
Yeah, then Monday. 2 days off. Then we have Monday. And that's all that's scheduled so far. All right, guys, let's jump in here into Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, we got answers. Make sure you go ahead and drop them there in the chat, and we would be happy to answer these for you. Also want to remind you all, I posted a bunch of videos this morning, 4 clips actually from yesterday's show, where Calvin and I rebuild the teams at the bottom of the West. I'm talking about the Thunder, the Blazers, the Rockets, the Sacramento Kings. If you guys are interested in our thoughts on those teams and what they can do to put themselves in a good position for next season, check out those videos. Also want to remind you all that we will be live tomorrow on this channel and on Royal Rebounds as well. So 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the normal time on this channel, and then 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Royal Rebounds. We'll be talking Sacramento Kings, all your questions, all that fun stuff. We'll be talking about the draft, breaking down the top 5 draft picks. It's going to be a lot of fun, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Any questions, anybody? All right, Progressive G says, do you guys prefer the 2-2-1-1-1 7-game series format or the 2-3-2 format?
I like 2-2-1-1-1.
And?
I just think you give, if you have it 2-3-2, you could potentially be giving too much of an advantage to the away team or the lower seeded team or the team with the worst, the lesser record, however you want to put it.
Yeah, I agree exactly with that. I mean, just look at this final series, right? If we were 2-3-2, Boston could win the next 3 games at home and close the series out, which would be quite unfortunate for the Warriors and especially for the Warriors fans because they only got to see 2 games in the finals for their team that has home court advantage. So I definitely prefer 2-2-1-1-1, and it also gives it a lot more excitement too, right? Like a series goes to 6 games, and it's like, okay, well the next 2 games are at home, so if I lose 6, I got game 7 or whatever. Versus the 2-2-1-1-1, it's like on the edge. It's like gotta win this game because we're going to the next building for the next game. So easy for me. Do you think the NBA will ever go back to 2-3-2? Or why did they do that in the first place? Just travel?
I'm not really sure. Yeah, travel I think was definitely a part of it. And another advantage for the league having it 2-2-1-1-1 is they get to drag the series out longer, right? Because you have more travel days come up sooner, and so they get to extend it a little bit further.
Yeah, what about the bubble, right?
Yeah.
Like all 7 games are in the bubble, and did it even say their names on the court? I didn't think it did because it said like Black Lives Matter, right? Like
it did.
Oh, they
didn't
had that
even
video.
have their names on the jerseys.
They had the video board behind that would like show the logo, right, of the home team.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if the players could see that or if that was just for TV.
Oh, the players could definitely see it.
Okay.
Because they basically built a whole screen around the top half of the bowl, so it wouldn't look like it was an empty stadium.
Okay. Interesting. That's a weird situation, man. And LeBron won the bubble. Like, how many players can be like, I won a championship in the bubble?
Yeah.
And Jimmy Butler played incredibly well. The bubble was weird for me because I feel like we saw it benefit Jimmy Butler, right? But I feel like the bubble benefits players other than Jimmy Butler. Like, in terms of Jimmy Butler is a motivated guy. He's going to show up to practice. He's going to show up to a game. No distraction's going to affect him. Versus I feel like the bubble should have been better for players like a Michael Beasley or somebody that has all these distractions in their life. And they're like, finally, I have a chance to focus just on basketball because I'm in the bubble, right? But weird. Maybe TJ Warren's one of those guys.
I don't know. I mean, it's just it's such a unique set of circumstances, not just for playing basketball or practicing, but for living life, right? Like, I mean, as much as these guys are all about basketball all the time, they're still creatures of habit, and they have their lives and their routines and stuff, and all of that got completely thrown away when you go into the bubble. So
the 2 guys I can think of that had the most fun in the bubble, J.R. Smith, because they had a golf course, and the dude loves to golf. And I think, didn't he win a championship with the Lakers?
Yeah. So
he's having a good time. Other guy, Paul George. Loves to fish. They were out there fishing every day.
Sweet Lou had a pretty good time too.
Yeah.
But he got to leave the bubble.
Yeah. Go get some wings. Do you guys think the lack of fans in the stands made some guys play much better? I mean, probably, but at the same time, like
Yes
these
and
guys have
no.
played in front of guys forever.
You're so used to playing in front of a huge crowd, even in high school now at this point, or AAU. You know, I mean, you have lots of people in attendance at games from the time you're 15, 16 years old, all the way up through the pros. So I think maybe some people kind of liked it at first, but
Could have
again,
been eerie too.
It's one of those routine things where you're like, it's noticeably different. So anything that's making your mind focus even the slightest bit less on what's happening on the court at that moment is a big deal.
Yeah, it could be kind of like eerily quiet, or like, you know, like you hear everything that everybody's playing.
They tried to pump in the crowd noise and stuff during the games, and I think for all the circumstances that were given, the NBA actually did a pretty good job. I mean, it's impossible to make it feel exactly like a normal game, but I think they did a pretty good job overall of doing their best. Well, but still, it's still a very different atmosphere.
Cases. So
they
did the best job that they could do.
Zero cases reported.
Reported, yeah. Reported. That's an important word to throw in there. But yeah, I feel like the hardest part was probably getting used to not having fans and then going back to packed stadiums again. And maybe not for like a guy like LeBron James or someone that's been doing it for so long, but I look at a guy like Tyrese Halliburton, who's like rookie season is like, you don't really have a full training camp. Everything's kind of weird. Like you're already adjusting to a new environment, a new, job, and it's not normal and nobody knows what's going on because it's all different. And maybe you play a year like that and then you're like, okay, year 2, oh wow, there's people back in the stands again. I'm just relearning how to do this job again.
Yeah.
I feel like it was really tough on their draft class.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And guys like Anthony Edwards have definitely picked it up as of late, playing incredibly well. Yeah, that's a lot of travel from San Francisco to Boston and back. But
it is, but I would like to travel from San Francisco to Boston the way that those guys travel.
Yeah, they're not sitting in the middle seat.
Boston.
They're not sitting in the middle seat. They're probably sleeping on the plane. They're probably all set up.
They don't even have to sit for the entire flight if they don't want to.
Yeah. Must be nice, huh? Wow. Calvin, I think we should have chosen a different career path.
Oh, trust me. I wanted to.
All right. Any last questions? We appreciate you guys watching the show today. Hopefully you are excited for Game 3. I know I am. And Calvin is as well. You're going to get to watch half the game before you go to work? Or?
Yeah, a little less than half probably. But
that's okay. Just don't look at the score, which I know is hard for you at work.
Man, it'll be on TV at work anyway, so it is what it is.
At least the Bulls aren't playing, right?
Yeah.
Or would you prefer them?
Well, I would definitely prefer the Bulls to be in the finals, but...
Yeah. Wow. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on another episode. We greatly appreciate it. Like I said, we apologize for being a couple hours late today. We had some things going on earlier, but we appreciate you guys for fitting us into your schedule. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Please go ahead and share this video and this channel with all your favorite basketball fans. Don't forget, we will be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 4:30 Pacific Standard Time on Royal Rebounds, our Kings Pacific channel, if you are a Kings fan. Also, if you guys have anything that you want to see on a future show, let us know down below in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. Calvin, any last words?
Enjoy the game. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you guys. Don't forget to tip your bartender.